This episode of the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast was first broadcast on the 29th of October 2015.
Hello and welcome to the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast, the bi-weekly show that brings you the best of powerlifting in Canada, discussing trending topics, training advice, coaching philosophies and much more. Our three co-hosts include Ryan Stinn, holder of the heaviest equipped squat and total in Canadian powerlifting union history, boasting a 4th place finish at Worlds and 1st place finish at North Americans. He is also the owner of Unparalleled Performance Training Centre in Moose Jaw, as well as co-owner of Inner Strength Products. Steve Cassioli, IPF World Record holder and bronze medalist at the 2015 IPF Classic World Championships, the 3rd strongest powerlifting in the history of Canada based on Wilks, and owner of Cassioli Strength and Conditioning. And lastly, Avi Silverberg, world team coach and world bench press medalist, owner of Pursuit of Strength, an online powerlifting coaching hub served to enhance athletic performance through programming and educational seminars. Today's episode starts right now.
Welcome to the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast. We want to thank everybody for tuning in this episode, and for everybody who tuned in on our very first episode. If you haven't checked it out yet, go back and listen to episode 1. That was our first podcasting episode. Ryan, can you tell us a little bit about how our first podcast actually went?
Really good. We had excellent response. We've had over 100 subscribers over YouTube and on iTunes and all the other podcasting programs. I think we had about 42 or 43 entries into this week's contest. So I think overall we had lots of excellent comments on Instagram and through email and Facebook. So really good feedback on the first one, and we're hoping to just make it better even from there. So
we can't wait to introduce our guest here for this week's episode. We have Kelly Branton, who recorded with us, and he actually had some fantastic insight just in terms of being involved in the sport for almost close to 10 years now, and just competing through the various levels, him actually going through quite a serious injury and then having to reassess his training and go through quite a learning process to get to where he is today. So you'll hear from Kelly in just shortly. Kelly also details a lot about equipped versus raw lifting. So that was one of the topics that Kelly really felt passionate about, that he wanted to talk to everybody about today. So we kind of dove into that and talked about overload training and how that might apply to raw lifting. And we also talked about his training template. You know, what does it actually look like when Kelly goes into the gym to squat, to bench, to deadlift? And how he preps for competition using some of these overload principles. So it was fantastic to hear from Kelly. You'll hear that recording in just a second. One of the things that we want to do here to start each episode is we want to review some of the powerlifting news in a segment called Coast to Coast Bi-Weekly Powerlifting Wrap. So that is going to be a segment that we do to start each podcast where if there was a Canadian meet happening in the span between recordings, we'll detail some of the impressive lifts so that you don't have to go through the results yourself. And we're also looking for you to tag us on Instagram or Facebook or hashtag Canadian Powerlifting Podcast. When you post a training video, we will search that hashtag and we'll be able to find you, and you never know, we may showcase you on our podcast. So you guys ready? Our first Coast to Coast bi-weekly powerlifting wrap up. Coast to Coast, Avi, Steve, Ryan.
All right, guys. Overall, some great lifting across Canada these past couple weeks at the most recent events. The first one, Fall Classic in BC. Best lifters, junior women's, Rachel Ianni, men's Bryce Thompson. In the open categories, the women's Cynthia Layton and men's Adam Ramsey. Adam actually told 507 Wilks. There's a good story here. I was actually in the back handling him for his meet, and one of his goals was to get up there on the raw Wilks ladder. Coming down to his final deadlift, I go, you need 310 kilos to pass me on the leaderboard. He says, give me it. Ended up pulling it, and I believe that's only 5 or 10 kilos off the world record. Next up, Ottawa Open. Women's Jen Carter, 63 kilo open. Men's best lifter, Mark Webster, 83 kilo open. And finally, the Evolve Classic Alberta, best lifters, Robin Homans, Luke McRae, and Brody Label. What do you have for us, Ryan?
I'm going to cover a little bit onto the USAPL Nationals, Raw Nationals that took place last weekend. It was a huge event, 1,100 lifters, 4 days, 4 platforms. That's a lot of stuff going on. Some of the depth, I mean, women's 72 kilo class had 55 lifters. Men's 93 had 68 lifters. It's just a crazy number of people competing there. They had 16 lifters over the 500 Wilks limit. Most open weight classes were won with a 500 Wilks or better. Some of the standouts that I kind of picked out were Jesse Norris at 93 kilos and Dennis Cornelius at 120 kilos. Both of them would have won in Finland back in June. So and both of them quite a ways off their competition. On the women's side, we had Jen Thompson and Kim Walford, as usual, put up big Wilks, along with Bonica Law, all over 500 Wilks for women. So it was a huge event and very impressive. And what about you, Avi?
This week, after scouring social media, there were some noteworthy things to mention. First, we have Kelly Branton, who is our guest today, squatting 800 pounds with no belt. If you all haven't seen that, y'all better remove yourself from the rock you live under. Next, we have Josh Hancock. He was traveling over in New Zealand and Australia and decided to do a competition. He broke the 500 Wilks barrier raw and set a new junior world record in the bench press and total. We also have some incredible ladies posting big training numbers this week. Casey Baines, a reigning 63 kilo national champion, deadlifting 172.5 kilos for triples. I'll tell you this, the 63 kilo open category at nationals this year will be the most competitive this country has ever seen. We have veterans like Casey Baines, Mina Franco, Sarah Kalbark, Amy Smith, Sam March, Megan Carroll, and newcomers like Christine Castro and Teresa Parsons, all capable of totaling between 385 and 400 kilos. And that, folks, is your coast-to-coast bi-weekly powerlifting wrap-up. Last week on our podcast, we had a little contest for our listeners. If you went to our website, www.canadianpowerliftingpodcast.com, you could enter yourself into a draw to win a free pair of SBD knee sleeves, a value of $130. I'm going to turn it over to Steve here to announce who the winner was. Steve.
And the winner of the SBD knee sleeves goes to Andrew Lutzuk. I believe he is from Montreal, and he has one of the nicest haircuts I have ever seen.
Nicest haircuts Steve has ever seen. Congratulations, Andrew. We'll be emailing you to get you to claim your prize.
And thanks to Inner Strength Products for sponsoring that prize.
So everyone, let's roll right into this week's episode, speaking with Kelly Branton. He is an incredible lifter. He is currently ranked #1 all-time on the Canadian Powerlifting Union all-time rankings. He just recently competed at his first World Championships in Finland in June, where he placed 3rd in the super heavyweight category. And he also walked away with the 3rd best Wilks out of all of the male open lifters, an incredible award for anybody to receive, and certainly an extremely proud moment for Canada for someone to win that. So have a listen. Here we go. Kelly Branton. So this week we have Kelly Branton joining us on the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast. We're all very excited to have Kelly sitting down with us and hopefully dropping some knowledge bombs. Kelly, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
So Kelly, why don't we jump right into it here? We want to know a little bit about more about Kelly Branton for those of us that, just see your numbers and see how much you're lifting in competitions, but maybe don't know how you started in the sport or, your history with powerlifting. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the sport and your progression as an athlete?
Well, for me, powerlifting, I always loved lifting weights when I was in high school. I started lifting with a coach. That he was my football coach in high school, and I was always like really, really strong, and I was always above and beyond like, the other kids on my team and stuff like that. So weightlifting for me I think I started lifting my first weights when I was in like grade 6. I lied to get into a gym, and you had to be
So
16.
you looked older than actually how old were you?
You had to be 16 to go, or you had to go with a parent. So I like lied about my age and got like a trainer and stuff when I was in like grade school. And that's how I started lifting weights. I was on, but then it was like I would just go do pec deck and like, I'd try to do leg press, but I didn't know what I was doing. When I really started lifting, it was in high school, obviously for football and things like that. And then how I started powerlifting was I played football for 2 years after high school, and I wanted to play football. That's what I wanted to do, but I didn't have any money. So I had to start working. So I dropped out of college, and I started like my first job when I was like 18. And that's when I was just like, I couldn't not do something like athletic or compete. Like I felt like it was missing something. So I started like kicking around the gym, and I remember seeing Tim Eckert. He's he's in the International Blind Sports Association, so he's a blind lifter from like my hometown, and I'd always see his numbers in the gym, and I'd always ask like what he's doing and what's going on with him. And he trained with a guy I knew from when I was in grade school too. He was a teacher, so I started asking about him and what's going on, and then eventually I was just like, you know what, this might be for me, like we'll see what's up. And then I think it was 2008 I did my first competition, and from there, here we are.
I remember in 2008, Kelly, you and I actually competed on the same platform at Nationals. I think that meet was held in St. Catharines, and you and I'm not gonna say we were going toe to toe because I was quite significantly behind you in terms of numbers, but you did win your first Nationals that year. I remember you standing on the podium, and I was third, and I was always impressed with your lifting, and I think I always looked up to you since that time.
Well, thank you very much, Avi. I appreciate that. But it was Moose Jaw in 2009.
Oh, was it? Okay, so I got my dates mixed up. So yeah, well, we competed at the national level in 3 lift for a couple of years, and then I moved on and did specialize in bench only, and then obviously you gained 100 pounds and moved up a weight class.
Yeah, well, I was essentially running away from you is what I was doing. At the end of the day, I was always very impressed with your bench and your fine haircut you've had for a very long time now.
Thanks a lot, Kelly.
Yeah.
All right, Kelly. Both you and I were both at the Classic Worlds this year. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your experience?
Well, it was my first big meet. Obviously across the pond. I had done more North Americans when I was a junior, and that was just a little flight. But going to Finland was definitely an eye opener and an experience as my first time traveling that far, and dealing with there's just so much to deal with that isn't like when you just go to a meet in Ontario or in Canada. It's like, the food changes. Obviously in Finland, no one even told me about this constant light thing, and it was just the beds were so small, and it was just a shell shock for me. And the first day, all I did was complain. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I remember complaining. Ronnie had to listen to me for 2 days, just complain and complain. And then I remember actually Ryan's wife Rhea telling me welcome to World Events. And I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, every single guy's doing what I'm doing right now, and I'm crying like a little baby. So, but my first experience at Worlds was awesome. After I acclimatized and got some sleep, everything was pretty good, and I loved it.
And you killed it.
Just to go back and talk about what Kelly was saying with the lights, in Finland at that time of year, the sun didn't set, so it would be 2 o'clock in the morning, and it would still be completely bright out. So it was very hard for our athletes to actually get some sleep. And I know for you, Kelly, one of the big things was getting enough food in you to keep your body weight. I remember one meal, we walked into the hotel bar, and in one meal, you ordered 200 euros worth of food.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was all to be eaten at that one sitting or if that was supposed to be spread out, but you did eat all of that meal in one sitting.
Yeah. Well, what was very upsetting to me, what all fell downhill for me was when I left my meal bag in my car. That was the end of me for the first 2 days because I had all my meals set up to jump on the plane, and because plane food for me, it's like eating a Snickers bar. So I got all my meals ready, and then when you didn't get all your meals on the plane, and then I got off, and I was like 4 hours at the airport waiting for a bus. So I was like, I don't think I ate for 12 hours. I think that's the longest I went without eating unless I was sleeping. So it was kind of upsetting, but we turned it around and got it done.
Yeah, that's the attitude that you got to have to compete at the world level.
So you mentioned Ronnie, and for those who don't know, he's referring to Ron Strong. And I think, Kelly, you had a really good nickname for Ron. Do you remember what you called him when you were there?
The dog?
No.
My comp wife?
Yeah, your powerlifting wife.
My powerlifting wife, yeah.
Yeah.
And Ronnie, there's just those guys, in powerlifting you meet a great bunch of people, and to me, Ron Strong is, they just don't get better than that. I mean, you could call the guy at 8 at night when he's got to wake up at 2 in the morning and work a 12-hour at Chrysler's, and you meet at the gym to spot you. And it's just, people don't really understand how big of a deal that is.
I think a lot of us who train, with training partners really do value their relationships, to you and the commitment to the sport, because really it's very, very difficult to go to competition, especially if it's in another city, and be all alone. I remember I did my first competition. I mentioned this in the first podcast. I flew all the way to Winnipeg from Calgary with no one, and I ended up bombing because I didn't have anybody there to help me out or to support what I was doing. So you did talk about Ron Strong in terms of helping you kind of get through the competitions. How do they actually, and the people you train with, I know Ron and others, how do they actually support your lifting in the gym and what you do in the gym? How important is that?
Powerlifting to me, everyone especially if you're just a spectator and you don't actually powerlift, you just see the guy on the platform in the YouTube video, right? But like I always said, powerlifting to most people looks like a one-man army, and it's actually it looks like just a one guy up there, but there's actually an army behind you. And it's everything. Your training partners in the gym, a lot of guys, you'll have these, lone wolf warrior powerlifters that say they train on their own, and that's great that they can get it done. But I'm sure if they had a group around them that was just as serious about powerlifting, they'd be even better. I'm blessed when I started powerlifting, I was in Windsor. There's not a lot of powerlifters in Windsor, but, 30 minutes away is Bell River, and there's the Power Pit, which I'm sure everybody kind of has heard of the Power Pit. And there's always a group of guys there working out. We've lost some, we've gained some over the years, but there's always been certain couple guys that hang around, and I don't think I could do what I do. Mostly for the number one part, I could not change all those plates. I would not be able to work out.
Now, hey Kelly, so I guess a number of these guys you train with are equipped lifters.
Mm-hmm.
How did this help you and shape your perspective on powerlifting?
Well, that's how I started. I started in equip, right? And that's all there was when I started. They all lifted in gear. There wasn't an option for raw. So essentially, that's how I started in gear. So if we're talking about guys that train with me now that are still on gear, you want to know what's that like?
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of powerlifting is burgeoning right now. There's incredible boost in our memberships, and a lot of them are classic lifting. I think the group of guys and ladies who started pre-2011, who grew up in the equipped era, have a certain perspective in terms of the history of powerlifting, and we know that you started in equipped lifting, so. Does that help? Does that kind of help your mentality or your training, the type of training that you do now that you're kind of transitioned more into classic lifting?
Well, for me, like the difference, did it help me? I just I don't know if it helped me, but like transitioning to raw, I just think like when someone starts kind of in powerlifting, if you know what I mean, like I think that every guy should start raw and implement the gear very slowly through educated lifters and doing things properly if you're going to go that gear way. I think it's very important to like
Build a base
into
strength.
it for strength first and have the proper, you need people to help you with gear or you will just quit. You need proper, you need people that know what they're doing to excel in that gear world. But for me, like, yeah, I mean, powerlifting, that's how I started. That was where I started in gear. I think, did it help me in the raw world? I don't really think it did because I was like, 3 years later until I got back in it. So I don't really know if it helped me or not.
So for those of you that don't know, Kelly, I mean, we just talked about how Kelly started in equipped lifting, but you did get to a point where you had some severe injuries, and it probably wasn't related to the equipped lifting, but maybe talk about these injuries that you had because you did have a 3-year absence from the sport, and then we saw you return into the classic world. Can you talk about just maybe a little bit about that injury? And then your return to the sport in the classic realm, and why you chose to lift classic and continue to do that.
Well, my first injury actually was right when I just started powerlifting. It was right after an Ontario championship, but it was a meet I lost, and I severed my Achilles tendon.
Wow.
My foot was pretty much hanging off, and that accident was just one of those after the 2 a.m. I used to go around and flip those the dumpsters where they put the garbage in it.
For fun.
I'd get drunk and I'd flip stuff and just being an idiot. And I just got my foot, I slipped and I got my foot caught under and it came down and sliced my Achilles tendon. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that kind of sobered me up where I was like, do I want to powerlift or do I want to be an idiot? And then I got really serious into it and I got back, and then after 2 weeks from Quebec, I was working. I used to bounce at nightclubs, and I was working, and one of my friends, he just kind of like, I was on a 2-step stair, and he kind of shoved me from the side, and I like landed on one foot awkwardly, and I just felt like I heard a pop, like I could hear it, and I actually I ruptured a disc, like I blew one of them up.
Wow.
And I had, I didn't know this at the time, but I knew it was bad. I was just kind of a steelhead, so I just never got it checked. I knew it was bad though. And I actually ruptured a disc, and then I had like 3 bulging discs and a bunch of other problems. Like I couldn't work out for the 2 weeks leading up to Quebec, but I was like, you know what, I'm not going to get diagnosed now because then I'm going to be all worried and not lift. So I just went to Quebec and lifted. And I think that wasn't the best thing to do because like after the squats, I could barely stand up. And even more rookie mistake is I opened up at 700 on the deadlift. It took me, so I was, and after that, by the time I got home, I couldn't even stand up. My leg was going numb, my whole left side of my body. Like I would try to just go do upper body in the gym, just like even like a bicep curl, and I would like fall on the ground because it'd be in so much pain. So I kept trying to get back at it, and I kept like running my head in a wall. And it took about a year of not powerlifting specific exercising to strengthen myself. And that's kind of how I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me, to be honest with you, because I really trained my core more than anything, and my squats went through the roof, and my deadlifts too, but like it's because I did so much no belt stuff trying to train my back to be really strong. And I was doing tons of back exercises, and I think that injury, I believe it was the best thing that ever happened to me in powerlifting, to be honest with you, because I came back stronger, smarter, trained way smarter, just awesome.
There are a ton of examples out there, from each one of us, from Ryan and Steve and myself, just learning from your past mistakes and your injuries and just making smarter decisions, and not just smarter decisions in the gym, but also when you want to compete at the elite level, just like you said, you have to make some sort of sacrifice in your life as well, in your social life and in some of your habits. And you said that you were maybe this young kid kind of being an idiot, but when you kind of had that mental switch that, hey, I want to be the best at powerlifting, everything else sort of kind of lined up for you.
Yeah,
So
go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say that just so those don't know, you had ruptured a disc, and you still in Quebec, I think you still squat just over 800 pounds. So that's it's mighty impressive with a ruptured disc and a screwed up back.
Yeah,
so can you talk now, Kelly, about just coming back into the sport? And you obviously came back to the sport after your injury, and classic lifting has started to take off. How come you didn't go back to equip lifting? Why did you make the transition to classic lifting? And perhaps maybe detail for our audience. Are you gonna plan to go back to equip lifting one day?
You know what? And there's when I was powerlifting, when in gear, I always wanted to. I didn't understand how there wasn't a league without gear. I was always like asking, well, why do we have to use it? Is there a league where we can't? And there is, but it wasn't in the IPF. And I just, I always wanted to lift raw. It was just in me. And when I hurt my back when I was done, I was always like, man, it would be really awesome if they came out with I didn't call it raw then or classic. I just, powerlifting without gear is what I would say, or something like that, right? But I always loved like raw lifting. Like, to me, the purest form of powerlifting is like, just picking up your boots and a belt and getting at it. Like, that to me gets me fired up. Like, I have nothing against gear lifting, and like I lift with guys that have been doing it for years and years and years, but like my heart's in raw powerlifting. Will I ever get in gear again? I don't think it's possible for me. I have a hiatal hernia in my chest, which is it's kind of getting a little worse, and the pressure that I receive even when I just put a belt on, and especially on deadlifts now, it's just getting really bad. And I don't think putting myself in those suits and pressurizing it like that, I don't even think I'd be able to breathe with the loosest suit on.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting, actually, because for those of you who haven't tried out a squat suit or a bench shirt, there is an incredible amount of pressure just on your body because the suits and the gear is very very is very tight.
So do you miss anything about equipped lifting? Like, do you miss tossing your reps on and having your knees?
You know what? To be honest with you, like, I don't have any issues with like not wearing knee wraps and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, I wasn't my carryover on gear lifting for lack of trying it a million times. That's not it at all. I never. I don't think I was the best at gear lifting. Like back then I was touching and going 500 raw or 490, 480, and I would only bench like 555 in the bench shirt. And same with squat and the deadlift. The deadlift I got a lot on suit, but with squat too, I never got the carryovers. I was never good at it. I tried really hard at it, and I just couldn't get it down. And I kept like some of the things that turned me off to gear lifting were, when you see a guy and he's putting videos up on bench or something, and he's like 100 pounds away from you, and then he puts a suit on and he blows you out of the water by a couple, like 30 pounds, and you're just like, man, how does he do that? And you're like, so then you go to the competition and he beats you on the bench. You're like, I am stronger than him. He is better in gear. So there's those things that happen, and I mean, it's just getting good at them and giving them a shot. I only did it for 2 years in gear, so I wasn't an expert. But
I know Steve is just itching to ask a question here because this is something that him and I have talked about previously.
Yeah, so Kelly, is there like a big difference in technique with the three lift when training raw versus equipped?
Absolutely. Like when you're doing a raw squat, and you got some tight gear on, 100% it is. Like even for me, when I do my no belts all the time and just throw a belt on, it's different. So like when I used to squat, I couldn't squat really fast. Like it was slow to me. Like I like to be violent. Like I like to like get it done in my reps, and in practice it was always slow down and then you kind of pop up.
Yeah, it's a lot more patient with the lifting.
Yeah, it's patient, and you got to be a smart lifter, and there's a lot more into gear powerlifting than raw. Raw's just kind of, you know, throw your belt on and, you know, do it. But gear, it's like, is your suit fit? Did you lose 5 pounds? You know, is your straps going on like they were before? Are your knee wraps tight? You know, is your suit all, there's so much to think about before you go out there. You know, did the guy take too long? Are your wraps on too long? It's just, it's a lot, man.
There's a lot more variability and when it comes to, you know, just the consistency of your gear fitting right, which is, you know, frustrating for some people. I always tell my athletes, you know, there's a difference between speed and control and tightness, and I think a lot of people think that, I mean, they're certainly interconnected, but you can view them separately, right? And so I think a lot of people in classic lifting, they can really generate a lot of speed eccentrically in a squat, so on the way down, still maintain control and tightness. But conversely, when it comes to equip lifting, you don't generally see a lot of people bringing, you know, dive bombing a squat with knee wraps and a suit, because the speed will, if you go too fast, will really impact the control, okay? Because you need to actually stay in a certain groove to actually get the most out of the equipment. So I know Ryan's just shaking his head because, you know, when he actually
Mr. Stin back in 2009,
he dive bombs his squats.
Like when I remember in 2009, like when I was coming up, like I used to be so impressed with Ryan and like Alex Mardell. I remember that was the first time I think you attempted 800. I don't know if you got it, I can't remember, but you squatted so fast, and I was like, man, like what is this? Like it looked like you were just like it was like the fastest down I've ever seen with that much weight. It was I remember seeing it in Moose Jaw and being like, wow, like, you know, it's just crazy.
Now, Ryan, since then, though, you have changed your technique, because you used to really dive bomb, you know, on the way down a squat with your squat suit, but you have since changed that technique. Can you just talk about why you have changed that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was the fastest way to get to where I wanted to be. So my goal at the time was to qualify or to win my class and lift at Worlds in 2008. So I found that, you know, I actually started by doing the drop the dive bombs to try and break a suit in. So I had one plate on the bar, and I was just dive bombing it to try and break the suit in. And then I put 2 plates, and I'm like, man, this feels awesome. But yeah, as soon as you get to you know, 600 or 700 pounds, that confidence to dive bomb, it's hard. But
is it possible to front flip in a suit if you're going that fast?
I've seen some people do some interesting maneuvers. I never actually, you know, if more likely, if anything, if I cut the depth, I would go forward. I would go onto my toes, but if I hit depth, I never got forward. I got on my heels a couple times, but yeah, I mean, it's finding the groove and just trusting the suit. But of course, in 2009 in Moose Jaw is when I blew my back out doing that. I don't know what I did. I never got an MRI or anything, so I don't know if I blew a disc or I strained a ligament at the very least, and so that kind of shut that down. And for the next couple of years, I kept trying to do it until I finally gave up and accepted my new reality of squatting slowly and trying to get strong enough to lift it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said about trying to balance those 3 things of speed on the way down, staying tight, and then keeping control of the bar, so that it's either, you know, if you're in a squat suit, you know, staying in the right groove, or even that applies to classic as well. Kelly, I just want to ask, about overload training, because one of the arguments for equipped lifting, or for using some of the tools that allow you to overload the movement, such as knee wraps and slingshots. So one of the arguments for equipped lifting is that it helps you in your training to implement overload principles. So being able to do more weight than you can typically handle, and there's some theory to suggest that that does translate over to your classic lifts. Do you use any overload principles, such as, you know, knee wraps or slingshots in your training right now?
No, I don't. I do all my overloads raw. I don't use a slingshot. I never use knee wraps. I just use like the SBD elbow sleeves and the SBD knee sleeves. I do overloads on squats. Um,
How do you do those? How do you overload squat without those tools?
what I do is say I'm squatting like 880 at a comp where I think that's where I'm at. I'm walking out with like 950, 970. About 4 or 5 weeks out, I'll start my overloads, and by the time I get to the comp, whatever I pick up just feels like a button. It doesn't even feel like anything. So
And so
on
do you
squat,
do static? Do you do static holds like that? Like how long are you holding that weight and walking it out for?
I will pick up the weight, I'll walk it out, and I'll hold it for sometimes about 8 seconds, 10 seconds. But when I first start them, I'll be shaking a little bit. As you can see, the one time a patented example of not doing my overload training was in Newfoundland Nationals when I squatted that 850.
Yeah,
I
I
think it was
remember that.
850.
For shaking.
I wasn't gonna even do that. Like I wasn't even gonna like. I was just gonna qualify at that meet. I wasn't planning on going nuts, but I don't know, something happened. I just got fired up on the way there, and it's tough to hold back sometimes when you just only did no overloads that whole. I was doing fives up to the before I left. I never even got anything over. I don't think I did anything over 700 before that meet, and then when I just started, yep, let's go, and then I did that 850, and I took it out. It felt heavy, and at the top it felt heavy. So that's to me that was
And
a prime example of me not doing my overloads.
now, when you take a look at your competition schedule, though, you were peaking for Worlds. So that national championships, of course, you wanted to do well, but you didn't implement the overload training there because you weren't peaking for that meet, or if you were
No,
to go back and yeah, you weren't peaking, obviously. So,
I
but
wasn't.
then leading up to Worlds, you did do the overload training, and when I was there, your squats looked solid. You weren't shaking at all, and you totally eliminated that problem.
Yeah, well, I mean, some guys like it to feel heavy, some guys like it to feel light. I would give a suggestion to just try it because for me, when you're thinking of maybe doing a personal best you've never done before, you know how some guys leave it till the meet, right? Some guys don't actually try their attempts. So what I would do is if you think you're gonna squat 600 pounds, just first of all feel 600 and walk out, and then maybe try 650. And when you see 650, it's heavy. Progressively go up a little bit every week, but then when you go to take out 600 before the meet, it'll feel like a button, just like a penny. Like it's incredible what that overload training can do. It really helped me out a lot.
Do you implement any overload training in your bench press and in your deadlift? So how would you, if you do, how would you do that and structure that into your training?
Bench press wise, an overload training for me is doing like a heavy board off a three, like a three board, and then just holding it at the top. To me, I do shake a little bit sometimes on the bench, and it's very, I think it's very, it's the same premise to me, but on bench press, I don't just hold it. I'll always just do a little rep with it off a three board and hold it there for a bit. Deadlift wise, I think it's tough to do. I think it rack pulls. Like the other day, I'm working on my grip strength, so I had the boys just pick the bar up, and I was holding 770 or something at the top, and see how long I can hold it. So that's just all grip stuff.
And are you addressing that? Because I remember in Finland, one of your hands was a little bit. They held you at the top for quite a long time, and your hands were maybe, you weren't used to holding the weight at the top that long. Are you doing holds because of that? What I'm trying to get at is, you obviously assess yourself in competitions, and then do you take those assessments and then try to implement those overload principles based on those assessments or areas of weakness?
At the end of the day, like my left hand, I broke it a couple times, so I mean that's got to be playing into the factor. I don't have the biggest hands, so I work on things that I'm not good at. And when you think you
Great.
know it all or you're the best lifter, you're not, and you're gonna get smoked.
Great.
So take all the things that you're not good at, stop being a baby, and start, knowing what you're not bulletproof, and start working on them.
That's great advice, Kelly. Great advice.
All right, Kelly. Is training equipped more taxing on the body versus raw? Like understand you can move more weight, but does the gear actually help like alleviate some of the extra pressure?
Um, I found the gear to me. If you look at my face after a competition, from a raw competition, if anyone's seen my face after a gear competition, it almost looked purple, like it was bruised.
Yeah, I
Jay
remember
Burney
seeing
said,
you.
yeah, Jay Burney said watching. Jay Burney always tells me about Quebec, and anytime I would do gear and I would go really hard, my face would turn purple, my eyes would go like completely bloodshot, like pools of blood in them. There's no question that raw to me puts more pressure on your body because I'm squatting more than I did in gear, and I don't
Agreed.
get that for squats. So I mean,
Agreed.
I put a bench shirt on actually when I was coming back here because I had planned the one nationals. I think it was in St. Catharines. I was going to do both, and when I put the bench shirt on, I think I had like 600 or 620 or something, and I did it. I hit the chest for one rep, and I did it, and I was just like, oh man, like I got the same in my head. It was all blown out and everything. So I think it might be different from person to person, but for me, it really puts a lot of added pressure, which I didn't mind. I wore it like a medal, but it's just,
Yeah.
I think it did add some pressure for sure.
It's amazing to see. It's amazing to see that you're able to actually do your equip numbers classic. Just recently, you had some really big training numbers classic. Can you talk about that big squat that you had just recently, and also you had a big bench too? I know it was only to a one board. Actually, you might have done something big to your chest after that. But can you talk about some of those big training lifts you've had over the last couple of weeks?
Honestly, for me, I really hope this keeps up, but I'm just constantly every week getting stronger. My lifts running up to this Commonwealth Championships are incredible. The 800 no belt, I think I could have done it last year, but I just wasn't in my cards for my peaking. I was a little late and behind. But 800 no belt for me was something that I wanted to do. Like I said, ever since I seen that one Olympic lifter from the States do it when I was after Quebec, I seen him do it with no belt, and I did it with full gear and wraps on and a belt. That was a big accomplishment for me. For bench press, that when I did the 800 for 5 before, or 800 for 1 before that, I did 705 for 5 sets of 5 no belt. So that was a huge training day for me. And then the bench, I'm closing in on a touch and go 600, which obviously, everybody wants 500, then 550, then 6. So I never thought I'd get up there, but I'm pretty excited about that.
Kelly, we can't wait to see you compete at the Commonwealth Powerlifting Championships. We're really looking forward to it. We're all not just us here on the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast, following your Instagram and your kind of weekly updates, but I know that a lot of Canada is watching as well.
So I guess we've kind of bounced around a little bit, Kelly, but just give us a bit of what does a basic week of training look like to you? Like, how many times do you train? What do the workouts look like? How long do you spend in the gym each day?
When I'll talk before 10 weeks out from the comp, I'm in the gym. Monday's a leg day. Essentially doing, obviously squats, usually about 8 sets, 5 to 8 sets of squats. Leg press, some hamstrings, or hack squats. Tuesday is upper back accessory day. Wednesday's a bench day, more focused on triceps and not going to my chest all the time, hitting some boards. And Thursday's a deadlift day, and Friday I'd usually go back and bench Sunday, and then Friday what would I do? Sometimes we deadlift Thursday, sometimes we deadlift Friday, so it's kind of a switch. And then I would bench again Sunday.
So not really a ton of squatting. It sounds like you're only squatting one day a week right now.
Yeah, I've had my my biggest gains where I just blow it out on Monday and then just grow, just eat and focus and completely recover for the next Monday. And I did the 2 leg days a week. I'm not saying I couldn't try it again, but I get such, it feels like each Monday is a new competition day for me. I'm so recovered and ready to rock. Same with deadlift, and bench is right now the only one that I'm doing twice a week, except for upper accessory back day on Tuesday.
So that squat day when you go in, Kelly, like that must be a hell of a workout. Like it must be just really, really intense in order for you to for you to require a full week kind of recovery.
Yeah, and everything's pretty fast and violent, and I've learned that no matter what the program says or what I've programmed myself to do, no calculator or program can kind of account for that day or intensity level or how insane you are that day. So I have a program that I'm like I follow in my head. I don't I write it down and everything like that. But sometimes when I'm having a day, I throw it out and just say, hey, you know what? Today I'm just snapping in the gym. I'm going to hit a personal best. And that was just like that day I did 800. And so when you see me post a video of a big thing, I didn't necessarily plan on doing it that day. It's just like sometimes you have those days where you're just in the gym and everything feels light. I'm like, man, I got to take advantage of this. I can't just stick to what I wanted to do. I want to, do something pretty impressive today. So that's kind of how I do my leg days and deadlift days too. When I'm just having a day, I'm not saying I max out because I never max out before comp. I'm never hitting a max, but I'll just do something really impressive to myself to know, be like, wow, last year I did 705 with a belt for 5 and I did one rep or one set and I fell over and I couldn't even breathe. And now this year I'm doing 705 no belt and I can do 5 reps of it, 5 sets. So it's like, wow, like, holy man, like you're making this huge gain. So it's in your head, like all these, personal bests, and a personal best, doesn't have to be a single all the time. Do a double, hit a personal best on a triple, like just always be making gains and going up.
So I think it's really important to actually differentiate between what you do and what some other powerlifters do that I see. And that is maxing out, because what you're doing is you're not maxing out on those days, because every time that you and I talk, Kelly, or we see a video, there's always reps in the tank. It's never looking like a maximal effort, because I think a lot of athletes, and maybe you can elaborate on this, want to go to the gym and max out every day and grind reps, and sometimes maybe compromise a little bit of form for the weight that they're lifting. What would your advice be to add to that and to tell those lifters? Because what you do, although you're lifting PRs, they still look incredibly light, as if you have more reps in the tank, because we don't want to get to a point where we're not able to recover from those lifts, or we're too sore or risk injury, right?
Man, like, you know what? I did all the stupid stuff anybody can do in powerlifting when I first started. I overtrained. Like, when I first started, like, I did so many dumb things, and you keep running your head against a wall. And when you're younger, you can get away with it a little more because you recover a little quicker, and you're just trying to, like, powerlifting when you start. At the end of the day, it's you're trying to beat another man. You're trying to be stronger than the guy next to you, girl or guy, or however you're competing. But it's just you need to see what's working with other people. Stop being narrow, open up, and look at who's doing well. Now, if I stayed the way I was at the start, I think I'd still be fighting for Ontario championships. I looked at other people, what they were doing, people that train to max out every week. It's a means to no end. It's just there's no and I'm a very aggressive lifter, and it took me a while, like pretty much after my back, to when I'm in the gym sometimes and I'm doing my sets, if my last set, if I wanted to do 8 sets or 5 sets, and my last one was, I was a little it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, and that day's a little different than the other day, I'll just take the next set off and I won't do it, because when you max yourself out, then you're going to carry that over to your deadlift session, and your deadlift session is going to be crap, and then you're going to try to do something you can't do, and then it's going to carry it over your Monday, and then you're dead. And so it's like, I just know you can write programs for anyone. This is why I haven't done a lot of coaching, and I give people advice. If they email me, whatever, I'll help them out. It would be tough for me to give programs out because my training is so different than everyone that I talk to. and it's just people need to learn to like. I believe maybe one out of a million is a little different, but I really think you need to not grind all the time. Don't max your lifts out before the meets, and just save your joints, especially the young kids.
Yeah, I
I
think
love that.
I think that's all really. I mean, and lots of it is stuff you kind of learn as you go, right? I mean, lots of it is knowledge you've gained from years of it, like learning you don't need to max out continuously, learning to really trust yourself and trust your body. That's
Exactly,
one of the biggest things that I think I finally started to learn. I don't think it's 100% there yet, but really trusting how you feel, and knowing that leaving a set in the gym is better than missing the next 5 workouts.
Absolutely. Like,
And not only listening to your body, Ryan, but also Kelly mentioned that he's open and willing to learn new things that he can apply to his training, so he's not closed-minded. And I think those athletes who are closed-minded and not willing to listen to perhaps some newer methods, training styles, or at least get advice from others, training partners, those are the ones who tend to hit the plateaus. If you can take good criticism, constantly be learning about yourself as a power lifter, then you're going to grow and you're going to see improvements.
one thing that really, and I was the same way too, opening up at a 700 deadlift because I did it in the gym. I remember almost bombing on Ontario's because I opened up at something I'd done in the gym. And this especially goes to people at a world meet, nationals, Ontario's, or whatever. Please, guys, just because you doubled it in the gym 2 weeks before, if you're cutting weight and you go to the meet and you're not sleeping the same and you're not eating as much as you did before and you're doing things differently, you need to assess yourself before you get out there, okay?
Yeah, so go by how you feel on that day, right?
Exactly. Meet day is completely different than in my backyard day. You guys, it's so sad to see it, especially at that level when you're obviously committing money and stuff. You guys, it's not a big deal to lower your opener a little bit if you don't feel it. You need to be completely confident going out to that bar. Everything you're going to do is going to go. So if you're in the back room and your last warm-up's heavy or something like that, hey, man, you know what? Just pull that opener down a bit. There's no one's going to say anything about that. You're going to get praised for being smart and getting that first lift in, getting that confidence, and then, hey, bump the second one up a bit, and then you're good to go.
Having that fixed and rigid mindset where it's, these numbers are set in stone. This is what I'm rolling with. I'm going to move up regardless if I make this attempt or not. Those sorts of plans always fail 9 times out of 10. Those all or nothing, or those plans that are just so set in stone. You're not flexible. You're not listening to your body. You're not taking in contextual factors that you traveled or cut weight. That's some really great advice, Kelly. Kelly, I think we're running out of time here on our podcast. What we like to do what we want to do to wrap up is we want to ask you 5 quick questions, and we're going to call this the speed round. So I have 5 questions for you. You try to answer these as fast as you can, and just try to answer them within a few words. Got it?
Okay.
Who is your favorite powerlifter?
Kurt Kowalski.
What is your favorite workout?
Squats.
Who is a powerlifter to watch out for in the future?
In my weight class or another one?
Anything. In Canada, preferably, if you know.
I'd say up and coming, that one junior, what's his name, Jake
Navarro.
Navarro. I think he's going to be something special.
I agree. What legacy do you want to leave behind in powerlifting?
Legacy I want, when people mention my name, I hope to say, hey, that guy was a pretty strong dude.
What can we expect from Kelly Branton at Commonwealth?
You can expect me to be 100% confident, give everything I got, and I guarantee what I do.
Okay, I know I said there was 5 questions, but there's actually one bonus question here, Kelly. Kelly, who has the best haircut? Avi, Steve, or Ryan? Go for
it. You know what, man? It's just me and Avi spent a lot of time together in Finland, and I think I got a kind of little man crush on him, so I think his hair looks a little better than your two guys.
There it is, guys. You heard it first. Abby has the best haircut. Kelly, we want to thank you for coming on the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast. I know that a lot of our listeners will be really excited to hear some of the information that you give us today, and a lot of experience, veteran experience, a lot of knowledge bombs for sure. We wish you luck, and thanks for coming on.
Can I say one thing before we go?
You bet.
Well, one thing is I appreciate having you, like, you let me on here and talking, but just for kids that see me at meets, they always email me after the meet and say they were too intimidated or scared to talk to me. Please come up to me at the meet, talk to me. I'm an open book. I'm free to talk to any level, girl, guy, doesn't matter. If you want a question or answer me, please come up to me at any time, and I'd be happy to answer anything you guys have. I love CPU and I love powerlifting.
One of the
Big
nicest
teddy bear.
guys in powerlifting. Kelly, how can people get in contact with you if they don't see it at meet, they aren't in Ontario? Do you have an email, or Facebook, Instagram? Can you just talk about those really quickly?
You can Instagram me at the Great White North Juggernaut, or you can Facebook me, Kelly Branton, or you can send it direct to my email, kbranton@hotmail.com. And I will get,
Kelly.
Sometimes it takes me a little bit, but I get to absolutely everyone.
Thanks, Kelly. All right. There you have it. Kelly Branton. Give him a shout. One of the nicest guys in powerlifting. Thanks, Kelly.
See you later, boys.
Thanks,
Care.
So there you have it. Kelly Branton. Love talking to that guy. Obviously a lot of knowledge and wisdom.
So Kelly Branton's going to give us a 1-month squat program. We're going to toss that on our website, CanadianPowerliftingPodcast.com. Go to the tab or the page called Bonus Content, and under there you'll find that a downloadable link for the month of squatting by Kelly Branton. It'll be very interesting to see what that looks like.
So there you have it. Go check out CanadianPowerliftingPodcast.com. Go to Bonus Content. Download Kelly's free squat program. And guess what? Kelly is totally genuine. He told us contact him anytime if you have questions. All of his contact information is on our website. So go check it out. There you have it. Our second episode of the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast. Tune in next time. Ciao. You've been listening to the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast, the podcast that brings you the best of powerlifting in Canada, hosted by Stephen Cassioli, Ryan Stinn, and myself, Avi Silverberg. Please follow us on Instagram and check out our website for some great free powerlifting content at www.canadianpowerliftingpodcast.com. If you like what you heard today, please rate our podcast on iTunes, and don't forget to listen to every other Thursday for a brand new episode.